Oh, I get now. I have a. Yeah. Nope, it still says there's an internet problem. There you
Hey there.
are. Sorry about that. We lost you.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, we changed the internet provider. I changed to a different part of the internet here. So let's see if that helps. Okay. Sorry about
Good. You
that.
got me?
Yeah, we got
Have
you.
you got me? And you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So,
Okay.
ain't technology grand? Before I was so technologically interrupted, we were talking about a fellow who had a jar and he was putting big rocks in the jar. After he got the jar filled with these big rocks, he asked the students in the audience, "Is this jar full?" And everyone said, "Yeah, it's full." And he said, "Really?" He reached under the table, pulled out a bucket of gravel, and he began to pour the gravel down into the jar, shaking it so that the gravel fell in between the rocks. And then he said, after that was filled with gravel, he said, "Is this jar full?" Well, by now, the students are beginning to doubt, so they say, yeah. And he said, "Well, no, you're right. It's not." He gets a bucket of sand. He pours sand into this jar until it's filled with the filled to the brim, and then he says again, "Is this jar full?" And they say no. And he says, "You're right." He finds a pitcher of water, pours that pitcher of water into the jar until it's filled to the brim. Then he turns to the students and he says, "Tell me what this tells you. Tell me what you've learned from this demonstration." And one eager beaver, of course, raised his hand and said, "What I've learned from this is no matter how busy I am, I can always find time to do one more thing." The professor said, "No, that's not what this story tells us. What this story tells us is if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in." Now, that's probably a story that you've heard before. And I think it has some application for us as ministry students and for everyone for that matter. What happens when I hear that story is I ask myself, what are my big rocks? What are the things that are my priorities? What's important to me? What do I care about and why do I care about it? What is it that I am here for? What's my purpose in life? What's my purpose in this day? Why am I here? Now, I've got to tell you that no matter what your big rocks are, they're good. There are no bad big rocks. And so I don't know about you, but I am really prone to make judgment about other people's rocks. I'm sure you don't do that, but I do it all the time. Like I have friends who love to spend time on Facebook, interfacing with their friends and playing whatever that game is with candy or whatever it is, which I don't play because I am superior to that. Know what I'm saying, don't you? So other people's rocks are just as important to them as your rocks are to you, and that's fine. What we want to do right off the bat is get out of judgment about whether they're good or bad or right or wrong. And the reason that that's important is because sometimes our big rocks aren't our big rocks. Sometimes my big rocks are mine because society says that they should be, not because they belong to me. I don't know whether that makes sense to you, but it's made huge sense to me because much of my life I have lived other people's dream for me. I spent years in business trying to be the blue suit dude at the top of the hill. And I got sort of there, and it wasn't satisfying because it wasn't what I chose to do, it's what someone else chose for me. And I bought into it because society says we're supposed to be the blue suit dude at the top of the hill. What I do. And I learned after spending many, many years doing the wrong thing that my big rocks lie someplace else. So please know where your big rocks are. That's an important thing to do. They have to be yours. And they'll change. Now, I don't know about you, but my big rocks are about presentation in a class and making sure that the internet works. My big rocks are about studying for exams, making sure that I get from here to there. Being a good student is a big rock for me, right? And yet I know 6 months from now, that's not going to be even in my bucket because I won't be a student anymore. It's a little frightening, by the way, to know that. What are your big rocks now? What are your big rocks going to be? I know a year or 2 years or 3 years from now when you graduate. You may not know. But please know, I got this really a year ago when I was sitting gently in my own little reading my email, and knowing that I was a good student and I'm good at that and I can be a good student forever. And then I got this email from Kathy Phelan saying, commit now to being a minister, not just a student, because you're going to graduate. That was pretty frightening for me. That was really frightening for me because now, good at being a student, I don't know that I'm going to be good at being a minister. I haven't figured that out yet. So I'm growing that rock over here in the corner. Okay? There are big rocks that are always big rocks. And don't let them get away from you in the process of doing this other thing. For me, family is very important. For me, the work that I do at my center is very important. For me, teaching is important. Some of those things that slide because I'm focusing over here. You know, there are times when I travel 7 hours each way to get to California. 3 days in California. The last trip down, I got a big 20 minutes at the beach. And the beach is one of my big rocks. I think I need to kind of keep track of all of that. So talking about balance here in a larger way, I've got to say that two big rocks that need to go in, whether you like it or not. They've got to be part of what you do as a minister because this is what you do. Michael Beckwith told his students, you only have two things: your authentic self and your relationship with God. I think that's a very good thing to keep in mind as we do it. The only thing I have to bring to ministry is my authentic self, relationship with the divine. So in the process of becoming, I am right now, judgment around that. There's too old, too fat, all the stuff that I've done with myself for years needs to go out because who I am is who I am. And I will not be other than that. I cannot be other than that. We've got a trip coming up pretty soon to La Casa de Maria. The theme for our retreat is who you are becomes what you do. You think about that for a little minute. Who you are becomes what you do. Your authentic self is what you can do, nothing else. That and your relationship with the divine. I happen to love Howard Thurman. Yeah, I don't know if you know who he is or not, but he was a minister at the time of Martin Luther King. He was a black minister in the South. He had the first integrated church in the South. And he says this about relationship with God. He says that he talks about the person who has made the primary surrender, commitment, yielding to God at the core of one's being. This is one who has relaxed his or her will to exercise and hold firm that initiative over one's own life. This does not come without acting struggle of the soul. One by one, the outposts of one's spirit are captured, retaken, and lost again through hours, even years of warfare, until at last, at the very citadel of one's spirit under siege, one is subjected to utter yielding. There follows often the silence when nothing. Then out of the quiet of one's bad-twisted spirit, something stirs, and a new life emerges, a life that belongs more to God than to self. The movement now rests with purpose. There are beyond little purposes, with ends, with private ends, with purposes, ends, God. This is the commitment that we make. We make as we do this schooling, as we move forward to maintain that end of the divine that you would to as ministers, as spiritual souls. So how do we go about doing this in an effective and reasonable way? How can we do ministry and stay ministry and stay who we are in the process of doing that, stay authentic to what we do? I've met ministers in places who have burned out over a very short period of time. Read somewhere that the average time the minister stays in ministry after graduating 5 years. That's not good enough. We need to be able to be ministers effectively, and how we can do that, I believe, being authentically who we are, by allowing ourselves to be served by the people that we serve, and by keeping balance in our lives. A couple of years ago, I was at a workshop in Chicago, and one of the workers there, one of the people there, presenters, talked about something he called radical selfishness. That sounds like a shocking and terrible thing. Radical selfishness actually is not that. We need absolutely to take care of ourselves if we're going to be effective ministers. We absolutely must do that or we'll burn out. I'm told the story of a minister who, as a minister in a small church, wanted everything to be perfect for her audience. So she would show up very early on Sunday morning, early enough that she could sweep the floors and put the chairs out so that the chairs were perfectly in line. Fresh flowers on the podium. Programs were exactly in the place where they needed to be, that the coffee was fresh and it was hot, and she did all of that herself in service to her congregation. The problem with that is that the chairs and making the coffee not really her job. Her job is to be a minister. That work needs to be done by other people. As ministers, the best way we can serve our people is to be responsible for their piece of the program. So by turning over those things, allowing ourselves to be served by others, we're strengthening them, we are becoming our own best ministers. That's a challenging thing to do, because we want to help people. That's why we're here in this business. We want to be helpful. Sometimes being helpful isn't the best thing we can do. Sometimes the best we can do is to be wise and minister. So radical selfishness may be a concept that you don't like very much, but honest to goodness, allow yourself to be served, allow yourself to be loved, and love yourself. That is central. Honestly, it is. And then, of course, we know the value of a daily spiritual practice. We can't have gotten as far as we are without killing ourselves in whatever way we do. That's a big, big rock. Big, big rock. So, how do we do all of this? 1 minute at a time. Why do we do this? Because we have a purpose, an end that's higher than the purpose and end we used to have. We need to set priorities. What really are the big rocks that need to go into our bucket, and what are the ones that we can set aside? And are they ours? We need to be authentically who we are at all costs, at all times. That can be challenging because we all want to please other people, but we're better off if we pleased ourselves, honest to goodness. And finally, balance. We have to be in balance all the time. And love, something that Galileo once said. Busy people. We are busy people. Galileo said, "Sun, with all those planets revolving around it and depending on it, consider a bunch of grapes as if it had nothing better to do." That's something I want to leave you with. Be who you are. Try to be easy. Be the sun. Allow others to revolve around you if that's what they choose to do. But remember to ripen that bunch of grapes. Enjoy. Namaste.
Thank you. Okay, I want you just to take a deep breath. Take a moment and tell us what you felt went very well in this presentation. like about it? What worked for you?
I love being able to see the audience and watch their response. And so thank you for this and for laughing and responding to what I say, because what I do very much is interactive with other people. I'm no lecturer, so thank you for that. The presentation itself, I think, went well. I've been trying really hard not to cry when I read the Thurman quote.